It might not come as a surprise, but all eyes in the college football world are going to be focused on Notre Dame at Texas A&M in Week 1, what it means and how it could alter the course of Notre Dame's season coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome back to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Wednesday, May 15th, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And as always, you can watch the show on YouTube or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching along on YouTube, please take a second, like the video below, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Or if you're on the go and you're listening to the podcast, please make sure that you're subscribed. And also, if you're feeling extra generous, please rate the show 5 stars and leave a review. Okay, it's great to be back. I'm finally back from vacation, and I'm battling a little bit of a sickness, but you know what? It doesn't matter. We're going to get through today, and I'm going to have Luke Smith join me once again, great friend of the program, and we're going to talk a lot about Notre Dame's Week 1 matchup against Texas A&M because it was announced that it's going to be on prime time. College GameDay is going to be there too, and then we build our own schedules at the very end, which I wouldn't say perfect, a little bit more of a dream scenario, but we had a lot of fun doing this, so enjoy. All right, it's been a couple weeks, but Luke Smith is back with me here to talk all things Notre Dame football. We're going to talk about Notre Dame's schedule this year, some big news about the season opener, and then later on, we're going to build our dream schedule. And this isn't just like a EA Sports NCAA football video game schedule. We tried to make this as realistic as possible and had a lot of fun doing it. So we're going to go over that later. But the big news that came out on Tuesday was that College GameDay is headed to College Station for Notre Dame-Texas A&M in the season opener. It's going to be in prime time, going to be on ABC, and there's actually a pretty decent slate in Week 1, but it seems like all eyes in the college football world are going to be on Notre Dame-Texas A&M. So were you surprised by this at all? What was your reaction?
I was a little surprised that College GameDay announced that they were going to be there, given that Georgia and Clemson are playing that week, and also Miami and Florida, but not shocked to see this in prime time, and frankly grateful that it will be, because I'm planning on being down there. And if that Texas game in Austin, I guess 8 years ago now, which is scary to think about, but if that game 8 years ago is any indication, that was one of the hottest I've ever been during that day, just tailgating leading up to that game. So I'm perfectly okay with this being a night game. Excited to be at that game. Not going to say I'm going to be excited to be in College Station. In fact, I'm trying to limit my time there as much as possible. I think I'm going to stay in Austin that weekend and take a bus to and from. But it should be a fun weekend, and that'll be a big game.
Yeah, speaking of College Station, I think we should address the big controversy going on social media on Tuesday. So the Notre Dame football account posted a graphic announcing the game time and the television partner for the Notre Dame-Texas A&M game. And for the record, big supporters of all the content that the Fighting Irish media team puts out. They do a really great job. But it seems like how do I put this? The representation of the part of Texas that they're in College Station is more similar to El Paso, which is where Notre Dame had their bowl game, than the actual College Station. And quite a few Texas A&M fans found that graphic and were quite critical, to say the least. Did you see that? What did you think about it?
I did, and you raised a good point. Perhaps it was just some leftover graphic that was from the Sun Bowl, but let's also be honest. I don't think anybody cares at all what College Station looks like or where it is. Like, it's just a lousy place. So I frankly could not care how it was depicted in that graphic. And like I said, I'm trying to limit my time there as is. So sorry, guys, don't care.
The funny thing, too, is like, so El Paso clearly has a stereotype. It's out there. It's in the desert.
Oh,
it's easy to make.
I got in trouble for this last time.
Oh, I know you, the proud son of El Paso. But like, I don't understand what the stereotype of like the surrounding area. I mean, obviously there's plenty of things that people think about, like the student body at A&M and the school itself, and the fact that College Station is pretty remote. But like, what is the stereotype of the city at large?
Based on what I picked up on in the comments, it sounds like there's a lot more trees and it's like a wooded area in College Station. I don't really know how accurate or inaccurate that is. Haven't had the misfortune of being there yet myself. But
I hope there's no College Station listeners on this.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. There always are, particularly on YouTube. But I'm wondering, like, there's that ranch in Texas that's called like the Woodlands, where a bunch of MLB guys have trained in the past. I'm pretty sure that's like an hour from College Stations, and I would think when you hear Woodlands, because it's like a wooded area. What do I know? I'm feigning ignorance here, or not feigning. I'm pleading ignorance here.
Yeah. Clearly, we got to step up our game with Texas geography, but it is going to be a huge game. It's really exciting. Last year, Notre Dame played a big game, although it was against Navy, but still it was in Ireland, so it was a big deal. This feels different. Even though Texas A&M isn't at the level that Ohio State was in 2022, it feels like that game in the sense that Notre Dame is opening up their season with a huge game. Everyone's going to be watching it, and it could, in a way, determine the rest of the season. I didn't feel that way in 2022, or 22, I should say. I felt like Notre Dame had basically little to no shot in that game to begin with, so I didn't think that it would seriously alter the course of the season for Notre Dame. But I do kind of feel that way about this Texas A&M game. Like right now, FanDuel has Texas A&M favorite by 1.5, and I think that's the spread pretty much across the board, no matter where you look at. And even though Texas A&M has a new coach in Mike Elko, and they lost a lot of guys last year, I'm actually not that surprised with the line. I don't really have a problem with it, just given the fact that they are at home and they still have plenty of talent on the roster. So what's your mindset about the actual game? Like, what do you think Notre Dame's chances are going into it as we sit here in mid-May?
I'm not right, mid-May. I'm not bothered by that spread either. It's obviously a tough enough place to play. I mean, they've had some history of some big wins there over time. It's a massive stadium with some very, very rabid fans. That said, I do expect Notre Dame to go in there and win, and perhaps even win convincingly. I don't know what Texas A&M is going to look like on offense. I think their defense will be pretty solid. But if we have a healthy Riley Leonard and Notre Dame is able to run the ball, I kind of think they can sort of roll the Aggies. And I think your point on Ohio State, didn't Notre Dame go into that game like number 5 in the country?
They were number 5 in the country, but I'm pretty sure they were 17.5-point dogs or something crazy.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the one year where we were all like, I don't think they should be ranked in the top 5. This year, I think there's a chance they're ranked in the top 5 again, and I think that they very well deserve to be in the top 5 if they're there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It does seem like there's a bit of momentum around Notre Dame from the national college football space, which is, I don't want to say it's not
alarming,
unheard of. It is a little bit alarming because I do think that sometimes Notre Dame's best seasons are usually when you least suspect it. 2012, for example, 2018, I don't think anyone predicted Notre Dame would go undefeated. 2020 is kind of a weird one because Notre Dame was returning a ton of production, but it was a COVID year. We weren't even sure if Notre Dame was going to play or anyone was going to play college football for that matter. But yeah, there is a lot of hype around this team, but it does seem like, this game is going to, it's going to basically shape a lot of people's opinions about Notre Dame. And I don't know how I feel about that because to me, when I look at this, it kind of feels like it's going to be like a dentist appointment. It's going to be pretty brutal throughout. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to really enjoy it that much. But then once it's over, you're going to be glad that you went because I do think Notre Dame is going to pull out a win. But it just seems like, last year was sort of an outlier and that Notre Dame came out against Navy and they were clicking on all cylinders, specifically on offense. That rarely happens in the season opener for any team, not just Notre Dame. Usually the first game, especially if you're going up against a good opponent, you're not really all on the same page yet, specifically on the offensive line. The timing is a little bit off with the receivers. You'll see a little bit more penalties, pre-snap too, with false starts and things like that. So I think we're going to see a lot of that in this game, especially considering Notre Dame is breaking in a new quarterback. And I just think it's going to be really, really ugly. And we're just going to be holding on and hoping that Notre Dame is able to scrape out with a win.
You talk about dentist appointments. That reminds me of the 2021 opener in Tallahassee, or more specifically the fourth quarter of that game, which I was ready to swear off ever returning to the state of Florida again. If that one played out the way it almost did, shout out John Doerr. But the difference is there were like kind of the mistakes you're describing in that game. There was a lot of that, but there was also just some complete gaffes and blown coverages getting used to a new defense at that time. And I don't think we're going to see that. So as long as the defense shows up in the way we think it does, Could be a struggle on offense, but I'm pretty confident Texas A&M is going to struggle to move the ball as well.
FanDuel has the over-under at 50.5. That seems high. I would take the under right now, just looking at what Notre Dame has on defense. I haven't really locked into the Texas A&M offense yet, but I will in due time. But I don't think Notre Dame's defense is going to be giving up a whole lot of points in that one. They're returning so much production. They have so many veterans on that unit. So I'm not concerned about the defense at all. I do have my concerns about the offense in the season opener. I think eventually they're going to figure it out and be really good. But with Riley Leonard, the concerns at tackle, two running backs who are going to be getting a lot of carries who haven't really had that much experience so far in their college career, in Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. Plus, we don't really know what that receiver room is going to look like. So I'm not worried at all about the defense, but I do think it's going to be a struggle to move the ball on offense. We'll be right back with Luke to talk more about Notre Dame's upcoming schedule, but I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, so the over-under 50.5. Texas A&M favored by 1.5, but they also have Notre Dame's season win total at 10.5. That's, I think, tied for the fourth highest in the country. So basically, it seems like FanDuel thinks Notre Dame is going to lose that season opener and then win out the rest of the way. We've talked about the schedule a lot already throughout the course of the offseason. We both think it's pretty easy, pretty favorable for Notre Dame to make a playoff run, but maybe it's just I've had too much time to think about it, but I am starting to think that the schedule could end up being a little bit more difficult than we expect right now. I think Louisville could be better than expectations. USC, I have really no idea what to expect. Their schedule is brutal. Their win total is only like 7, but they could be much better than a 7. I mean, they had 7 wins last season. I think this year's team is probably going to be better than than last year's team, but they could still end up going 7-5. So has your perspective on the schedule changed at all, or do you still feel pretty confident that Notre Dame is going to have not necessarily a cakewalk, but shouldn't deal with that much adversity throughout the season?
I feel confident given just how talented Notre Dame's roster is. But we really don't know what any of these teams might look like. You mentioned Louisville. They picked up a bunch in the portal. I just have to hope these guys remember what happened last year and just want to bury them after how embarrassing a performance that was. But we'll see. You mentioned USC's schedule. It's brutal outside of the Big Ten slate, which is going to take a lot out of them. They also have LSU to start the year, and who knows what they're going to look like by the time Notre Dame goes to the Coliseum. But on that note, Notre Dame never really plays well at the Coliseum, so
exactly.
That's important.
Yeah.
And then Florida State, I think Florida State will be pretty good. I don't know what to expect out of DJ Uiagalelei, but what I will tell you is that I don't love going up against a quarterback for the third time after you've beaten him twice. Like sometimes the third time the charm rings the other way. And he's an engaged man. Maybe he's truly an adult now. We'll see. We'll see. I can't believe he's still in college, and maybe it'll be an even worse performance from the last time compared to his first time. But that worries me a little bit too.
Yeah, Florida State is definitely a really interesting team this year. Have no idea how they're going to be. They lost so much last year, but they're very active in the transfer portal. They have
a good coach too.
Yeah, they've got Mike Norvell, who Alabama really wanted at one point before they landed on Kalen DeBoer to replace Nick Saban. Florida State concerns me. USC concerns me specifically because it's on the road. And like you said, Notre Dame, maybe it's just a coincidence that whenever Notre Dame travels to Los Angeles at the very end of the season, that all of a sudden all of the players aren't super locked in for that game, and that maybe curfew might be broken by a few guys. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. With you on Louisville, it was pretty painful being at the Kentucky Derby a couple weeks ago, which is Churchill Downs is located right next to what was formerly called Papa John's Cardinal Stadium. I don't remember. It's like L&H Federal Credit Union Stadium or something like that now. And man, I was getting ragged on. Everyone's like, just give me a hard time about Sam Harbin, that he's never going to go to the Derby. And honestly, he shouldn't. He should never step foot in Louisville ever again. But, those games concern me. And also, we got some news on Tuesday that Notre Dame is going to play at Purdue at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. You and I have talked about it before. The Purdue game is always weird. The fact that it's going to be on CBS even feels a little bit weird. So I could see that game potentially being tricky as well.
Yeah, I will say I was thrilled to see that it was announced as day game, because I'm going to be at a wedding in Cincinnati that weekend for one of my girlfriend's friends, and I really was not looking to making a terrible impression by watching the game on my phone that night during the wedding. So this actually worked out pretty well.
So instead of watching the entire game at the wedding, you're going to be sweating out a fourth quarter when Notre Dame is somehow in a dogfight against Purdue and the wedding is starting. You're going to have to check in for the last couple minutes.
Yeah, hopefully not, but probably.
What year was the Kyle Rudolph game-winning touchdown on fourth down?
2009.
And
he just boxed him out in the end zone?
Yeah, and Clausen threw it about 125 miles an hour right into his chest.
Yeah.
That was like one of my favorite moments of watching Notre Dame when I was younger. And looking back,
think about how sad that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I think Notre Dame moved to 3-1 with that win. And you're like, okay, like season didn't start out exactly how we wanted it, but now we got this win over Purdue. Things are going to really get a lot better. And then that team went 6-6. Charlie Weiss got fired. But in the moment, it was a really good win.
It was. And yeah, I remember that vividly. It was like a late end to that game too. It felt like it mattered. It did not, but yeah, that's what we were living for back in 2009.
Before Luke and I share our ideal Notre Dame football schedules, I wanted to tell you about Gametime, because Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off, and with great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I actually just used Gametime a couple months ago to go to a Lakers game, and it was great. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy, but my favorite thing about Gametime is the pricing shows your total costs up front, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We've talked a lot about the schedule so far today, and that's really all we're going to talk about for Notre Dame's upcoming schedule. But it got us thinking, like, what would be the ideal schedule? Because some years it's a little bit too difficult. And you're like, man, this is just a really brutal slate. That's really not that fun. And then you have a schedule this year where you look at Notre Dame's schedule, specifically the home slate, and it's really uninspiring. I mean, the best home game is Florida State in early November. And then after that, it's like, Louisville. And I do think that, especially coming off last year when Notre Dame had that huge game against Ohio State, one of the biggest home games in years, like how exciting.
And USC, who was undefeated at the time.
Yeah, that's true. So having those 2 home games last year and all the excitement that surrounded both of those games, and then going into this year, it's pretty disappointing. It's a fall off. So we decided to make our own maybe dream schedule for Notre Dame, but we tried to make it as realistic as possible. So the rules here are 6 home games. You have to have 5 true road games. You get 1 neutral site game and 1 bye week. And we are going to pretend that this is in a post-ACC agreement world, because we feel like that time is probably coming sooner rather than later. Could be next year, could be a couple of years, but I feel like this arrangement where Notre Dame has to play 5 ACC games a year is probably not going to last that much longer. That's just a prediction from us. So we went ahead and made a full 13-week schedule. Tried not to make it too difficult, but Luke, tell me who you got in your first couple of games of the season.
All right, so first 4 weeks of the season, I got Notre Dame hosting Michigan to kick off the year. I really like the idea of opening every season with Michigan. I just think when you go back to 2018, there was so much excitement that entire summer, knowing that Michigan was coming to town to open that that year. I guess it also probably helped to me that was my senior year of college. So there's even more excitement around that. But I think that's a great way to kick off the year. Under the lights, hosting Michigan. Definitely don't want to go to Ann Arbor. I swore off that place in 2019. But hosting them would be awesome. I have the Irish going to Wake Forest in week 2. Power 4 team, not a great program historically, but they'll give you some competition, and we'll see what you're looking like coming off the Michigan game. Then I got them turning around and hosting the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, which is probably the lowest level of team you want to play, like a MAC title contender, but not a game you're going to lose, a game that hopefully you can get some guys into. And then I have my first big road game of the year, and that's at Oregon. To my knowledge, maybe Notre Dame played at Oregon like the 70s. It's been a long time. I know they haven't played in our lifetime, and that's a stadium that I've always wanted to see. So would love to see the Irish do a home and home with Oregon and get out there and play the Ducks.
Just did a quick Google search. It looks like Notre Dame played Oregon twice. And it looks like Notre Dame won. I don't know. This is a very quick search, but yeah, that'd be awesome to go to Autzen Stadium. That place is really cool. Small. That place would be rocking. But I do have a question though about the Michigan game, the season opener. I like the idea of playing Michigan early. I don't know if I love playing a really tough team in the season opener for all of the reasons I mentioned at the beginning. Usually whatever you look like in the season opener is probably going to be one of the worst games you play all season long. If you lose the season opener, it just really kind of takes the wind out of the sails a little bit. But you like playing a competitive game right off the bat.
And if you win the opener with your quarterback who gets benched for a better guy, the national media will go on for the next 12 weeks saying, actually, Michigan is better than you, despite the fact that you were playing with your backup running back and your backup quarterback and all these other factors. So that is a good point, because when you win in week 1, it actually means you suck, right, Dan Wolken? Idiot.
Yeah, that was the thing about that. Like, you win that game and then people just kind of forget about it as the season goes along. That really happened. Like, yeah. I know you're being sarcastic, but people kind of forgot just how good of a win that was for Notre Dame, because after
and who didn't play.
Yeah. And Michigan started rattling off those wins, and they were beating the hell out of teams. And then Notre Dame struggled against Ball State. We don't have to go through the whole thing. Michigan ended up getting absolutely housed by Ohio State that year. But all right, let me go through my first 4 games. So we're going to open up the season against Boston College in Ireland. We're basically running back the opener last year, but we're playing Boston College instead. I think that'd be a really, really fun game. This might also be recency bias, considering I just got back from there 2 days ago and I saw Aviva Stadium. Brought back a ton of great memories. I would love to go back and do it again. I think Boston College would be the perfect opponent to do that for. Week 2, I got Miami, Ohio. Again, same reasons. MAC team, semi-competitive. You should still blow them out. My first big road game is week 3 at Tennessee. I've said before, Tennessee is the coolest college football stadium experience I've ever had. I went to a game against South Carolina way back in like 2013. Really, really cool environment. I think of all the SEC teams, it's the one that I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say I root for them, but I don't actively hate them. Which is basically the case for every other SEC team. So I think that'd be cool. Also, Notre Dame has somewhat of a history against Tennessee. Yep. They haven't played a ton, but they certainly have played several times before. So that'd be fun. And then the 4th game at home against Michigan State. I think, growing up, I consider that a rivalry. They played each other every year. There was the big cone that you'd get for winning that game. And I kind of
megaphone.
The megaphone. Yeah. There it is. I forgot all of the trophies ever since the NCAA football video game went away, because that was always a big part of it. But I think playing Michigan State, good team, but never that good coming off the Tennessee game. I think you get one really big game in the month of September, and it's still pretty even. And then you bring back some old rivalries like Boston College, Michigan State.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think, if that's the neutral site you want to do, Boston College is probably the perfect team for that.
Yeah. All right. So that's September. What's your October looking like?
So I've actually got a bye coming off that game at Oregon. I think that catches them at a good time. And as we learned last year, it's not always the best thing to play 6 straight games or whatever it was. So got a bye in week 5. Then I've got the Irish returning to South Bend to play Cincinnati. Again, Big 12 team, but like regionally, it kind of makes sense, I think. I could be talked out of this one, but maybe also personally, I just want some payback from
I was just going to
that
say,
BS
this is
that
a
happened a
revenge
couple
game,
years
yeah.
ago. Yeah. And then I've got the Irish going out to Colorado Springs to play Air Force. This is a game that if they have to play a military academy, may as well do Air Force and may as well play out there because it's a beautiful campus from everything I've heard. Notre Dame back in 2002 when they played Air Force, College Game Day was theirs, undefeated Air Force against undefeated Notre Dame in like week 8 or 9 of the season, which is very funny to think about. But it's a road game, but it's not like a daunting road game. It's obviously requires a lot of travel, but you should still beat Air Force. Still a road game, and I think a fun game for fans to travel to. And then in week 8, just like you, I have Tennessee, but this one at home. For many of the reasons that you mentioned, I think doing a home and home with Tennessee would be a lot of fun.
So the Air Force game, that's a good opponent, good, not necessarily cupcake. They're a little bit above that. Also, for fans who want to attend that game, Colorado Springs is awesome. What year was it when Notre Dame played Air Force on like ESPN 8, the Ocho? Do you remember that?
They did it a couple times. One year was like 2006.
I think 2006 was the year that I'm thinking of. And then like there was one year in maybe 2014.
It was 2013 because Tommy Rees, I think, had like a career day there.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I remember being with my dad and we were driving around all over Louisville to try to find one bar that had the channel so that we could watch that game. And I think we really struggled, but then we ended up at this place called Uno's, and their claim to fame was that you could still smoke inside, like smoke cigarettes. And we walked in and just like inhaling cigarette smoke.
Yep.
It's a weird memory that I have, but that's what I think of when I think of Notre Dame playing at Air Force.
Yeah, Brady Quinn, 14 and 19 for 207 and 4 touchdowns that day. Yeah, I remember that game too. I think I was at like a family friend's house and they had to like pay-per-view it, which is a wild concept, but it was like some sort of weird pay-per-view deal.
All right, man. It was different times. 2006. There was no streaming yet. It was hard to watch all these games. Okay, so that's my September. Now we're going to shift over to October, and I'm going to go at Purdue. And the reason I'm going at Purdue is because the next game is home against Michigan, and I wanted to space out that Tennessee game and that Michigan game. So we're going to go at Purdue. It's a road game, but it's really not that far. I mean, they could literally just take a bus from South Bend to West Lafayette. Yes, some weird things happen. Really, anytime Notre Dame plays Purdue, but specifically when they play at Purdue, we've talked about that before already on today's show, but I still think Notre Dame would get the win. Also, feels right to play Purdue early on in the season. I don't really remember a time when Notre Dame played them like in October or November, certainly. So the top of the schedule kind of looks like a real Notre Dame schedule, one that we kind of grew up with Michigan State, Purdue. And then at week 6 at home, Michigan, I feel like by this point, you've ramped up. You're kind of right there in the middle of the season. You're ready to go. You're ready to play Michigan. So after that game, a bye week, a much needed bye week, because in week 8, I've got Notre Dame playing at home against USC. It's a pretty tough stretch. Michigan, bye week, USC. But I think having those two rivals back-to-back in Notre Dame Stadium would be one hell of an October and just a lot of fun. That's like the perfect time, too, on campus when like the weather is turning right before it gets really terrible when the winter arrives. So getting Michigan and USC, two of Notre Dame's most traditional rivals, at home the same month. It'd be a daunting task, but I think it'd be really enjoyable for everyone who watches and attends.
There you go. No, I like that idea. Definitely.
All right. What do you got in November?
So this is kind of a gauntlet. I won't lie. So remember, we're coming off that Tennessee game, and then we're playing Wisconsin at home, which I think Notre Dame should just play Wisconsin more often. I know we got that Lambeau game coming up in a couple of years, but this should be a more regular thing. Then I got the Irish going to East Lansing to play at Michigan State. For many of the same reasons you mentioned, this just should be a more regular game, back to what it was when we were growing up. As for the neutral site game, I've got them playing Northwestern at Wrigley. I think it'd be cool to see a Notre Dame game at Wrigley. I'm sure it'd probably be like the most difficult ticket ever, because you're fitting 40,000 people in or whatever it is, and there's so many people that would want to go to that game. But I think that'd be awesome. Northwestern's done that a bunch of times. And I like the idea that in November, it's keeping you mostly centrally located, at least for the start, playing at home, then going to East Lansing, then playing in Chicago. And then I have on senior day them hosting Virginia. I mean, as long as Tony Elliott or somebody equivalent to coach, you should beat the hell out of Virginia. And of course, ending the year out in the Coliseum against Southern California, which is always a tough task, but a fun game nonetheless.
Okay, got a couple follow-ups there. My issue with the game being at Michigan State is, do you remember how terrible of a stadium?
Oh, it's awful.
It's awful. I think it's legitimately the worst stadium I've ever been to. Although you would counter with Northwestern, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, Northwestern is worse, but I was going to say that Michigan State and Lane Stadium and Blacksburg are like the Saints Stadium. They're both dumps.
Were you upper deck for that Michigan State game in 2017? Do you remember walking up the chain link fence? It was like a safety hazard. And if you had to use the restroom, even if you were on the upper deck, you had to go all the way down. There was a line that was insanely long.
I don't think I'd go back there for what it's worth, but
okay. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just looking at your away slate. You know, we're looking at these road games. We're planning them out. We're like, all right, which ones do we got to go to? We're going to miss the Michigan State game. Okay. Also, Northwestern, Wrigley. Love the idea of playing a game at Wrigley. Why are we doing that in November? Why wouldn't we do that like in September when Chicago is still kicking ass and you still got Chicago summer?
Because the Cubs will be playing the regular season and then in the playoffs.
They might be in the World Series if it's November.
Yeah, so this is like November 10th weekend. So right after they win the World Series, and they're turning around and hosting this game.
Okay, that's fair. They usually do they have a bowl game? Or Northwestern has played there a few times, right? Isn't it?
They usually play there in November.
When they first did it, they always had like whoever had the ball had to go one direction on the field. Do they still do that? Right?
No, that was pre Ricketts renovations where you could only go towards one end zone.
Okay, I'm more in on playing at Wrigley in November than if you can actually go on both sides of the field. Virginia, no problems. USC, no problems. Okay, I'm gonna go over my November. Also, a bit of a gauntlet as well. We're gonna start off at Wisconsin. I agree with you. Notre Dame should play Wisconsin. I would just really like to go to Camp Randall, one place I've never been to. Everyone who's been there has said it's just an awesome, awesome experience. And that was sort of the downside of Notre Dame playing Wisconsin in I don't think it's the Shamrock Series, but either way, trading off neutral sites, I think it would have been a lot more fun if they just did at Notre Dame and at Wisconsin. But hey, in this dream scenario, they're going to play at Wisconsin. You mentioned Virginia Tech. That is who Notre Dame is going to play in Week 10 at home. We're not going to Lane Stadium for that one. They're a mediocre ACC team. That should be a win and a nice little break in between Wisconsin and at Clemson. Notre Dame has not done that well at Clemson, but I really, really do like that. I think it's a rivalry now. They've traded blows over the course of the past couple of years. Like-minded institutions, some would say. It does seem like there's a lot of parallels there. And for as much as we make fun of Dabo, I think you and I are both a little bit more aligned with his beliefs, not necessarily about the transfer portal, but what basically how college football should be run. And I want to keep that game on the schedule because I think it's a lot of fun every year.
Yeah.
Week 12, after that really tough stretch, they're going Michigan by USC, at Wisconsin, home against Virginia Tech, and at Clemson. It is time for an absolute cupcake, some team that Notre Dame can absolutely hammer. And I'm going to put UConn
So it's a revenge game as well.
This is also a revenge game. It's senior day, just like it was way back in 2009 when I was there as Notre Dame lost to UConn at home in Charlie Weiss's last home game as the head coach of Notre Dame. So I'm expecting a different result this time around. Notre Dame should put the hammer on UConn, but like I just said, they're going to be coming off a really, really tough stretch. So we'll close out the season at Stanford. It's a rivalry game. I guess it doesn't quite have the same luster as it did a few years ago, but I think the ability to end the season on the road in California is always great. And selfishly, I can probably make it to that game, or at least I have a better chance of making it to that game with it being at Stanford. So what do you think about my November? It's a tough stretch, but it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah,
I think that's fair on the Stanford point for you. Personally, if we never played Stanford again, I think I'd be okay. At least if this is how they're going to be from a competitive standpoint. And I might consider, and I might have to reorder some things, but I would consider flipping the at Michigan State for at Clemson because I agree. I would like to keep that game on the schedule as well. But no notes otherwise.
there is a glaring omission from both.
Oh, it's not glaring. We're not playing no damn Navy.
No Navy. We don't have to do the rant. I know that some people are going to be pissed. I don't want to play Navy.
I have Air Force on there. It's fine.
That's true. That's true. I don't have any service academy, so clearly, I guess I hate our troops.
Apparently.
But I really do like the schedule. I'll go over mine one more time, and then Luke, you can go over yours. We're going to go season opener, Boston College in Ireland, Miami, week 2 at home, at Tennessee, home against Michigan State, at Purdue, home against Michigan, bye week, home against USC, at Wisconsin, home against Virginia Tech, at Clemson, home against UConn, and then it wraps up at Stanford.
All right, and I've got Michigan at Wake Forest, Miami, Ohio, at Oregon, a bye, then hosting Cincinnati, going to Colorado Springs, play Air Force, hosting Tennessee and Wisconsin back-to-back, going to Michigan State, playing Northwestern at Wrigley, hosting Virginia on Senior Day, and going to SC. As I go through this, like I mentioned, I think the Clemson one's one I would like to have on there. Sneaky road game that didn't get mentioned, maybe going to West Virginia. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Also might get murdered by some West Virginia fans. But I think there was in the early 2000s, Notre Dame played West Virginia a little bit. I think that'd be a fun one to get back on the schedule.
Yeah, what were the ones outside of West Virginia? Did you have any that you were thinking about putting on there? Because I really thought about putting Miami, Florida on the schedule.
But I don't want to go down there.
I don't want to go down there. And also, that game, Notre Dame's played them several times in the past decade plus, and it's really been, the 2017 game was terrible. That could have been a lot of fun. But honestly, that game has mostly been a dud because Miami's been terrible. And then sometimes, like in 2016, Notre Dame was terrible. So
but they won that game.
Yeah, they did. But that was one game I was thinking about. I thought about putting LSU on instead of Tennessee. I also really wanted to put Ohio State on, but they have played them a couple times now, and I really wanted to go to Wisconsin. Are there any other games you thought about putting on there?
I think some of the ones you mentioned, but other than that, no. For whatever reason, Alabama didn't sound that interesting to me.
It's going to happen.
Texas was one I considered as well, going back to Texas, but yeah.
Yeah, Texas was really fun until it wasn't. Okay, going to put you on the spot real quick. This year's teams with your schedule, what's Notre Dame's record?
I'm going to say 11-1.
Who's the loss?
I don't know if they win at Oregon.
Yeah, I was going to say Oregon would be really tough.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you. I feel like 11-1 is pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 10-2. I'm going to say I just think it's so daunting. I don't even know who necessarily the losses would be. Maybe at Tennessee, that'd be tough.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
who
I
knows
don't know
what Clemson's going to be. Yeah.
All right. Anything you're looking forward to in the Notre Dame football space? There's not a whole lot going on right now in the middle of May, but
I hope that remains the case.
Yeah, that's true. Especially after the semester ends. Hopefully we don't have any academic issues. We don't have another Everett Golson situation.
Yeah.
But Luke, a lot of fun today. I'm sure we'll be back on again to do more fun hypotheticals and more fun stuff like this to get us through the summer, because it is going to be a dead time these next couple of months.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. I'll be back tomorrow morning to talk some Notre Dame recruiting. Also, please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can also give us a follow on social media. The X account is at Locked On Irish. Instagram is at Locked On Irish Pod. And my personal X account is at Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you tomorrow.